Hello, Cozy Detectives, and welcome to the Blanket Fort Files. I'm Larissa,
And I'm Joy.
and we're here to report on all things comfy and cozy.
Specifically autumn today in Gilmore
Yay!
Girls.
We couldn't wait any longer. It's only August in your world, mid-July in our world. Cue the Lana Del Rey song. But we just couldn't wait. We're very much, we decorate on August 1st, or if you're recording a podcast, maybe you decorate a little earlier like Joy.
I got a few leaves that snuck into the background, and I did my nails. And not gonna lie, this was like one of the times in the last month or two where I was like, yes, I feel like myself. You know what I mean? When it's like, I'm a fall girly. I just like know it. So yes, we are ready. We are out here. We are talking about the thing. So exciting.
Yes. And I think too, it's been definitely fun talking about how to make summer cozy. And I think both of us have incorporated moments of that into our lives. But fall and winter are just peak cozy times. So we invite you into the blanket fort today. Really get comfy, cozy, embrace fall. Maybe it's still 100 degrees where you live, but inside the blanket fort, fall has arrived.
Yes, agreed. I think that through doing different episodes of the podcast, we definitely have helped hopefully our cozy detectives as well, but also me too, of just having a little bit more of a cozy summer. But like my 2% cozy last week or the week before was about trying to create the like summer vibes in my house, because that's the thing that's tricky for me. Fall, I feel like, yes, got it, check mark. So I was very excited to put up some fall leaves today, even though, as you said, it's quite hot outside and we are both sitting here in sweatshirts, but 'tis the autumn season in our hearts.
Exactly.
So
Always.
always.
So I guess we should just dive right in. There's no beating around the bush. It is clearly our Gilmore Girls episode, long awaited. Like we said in the pilot, I'm ready to talk about the episodes. I guess it was kind of our pilot, but
yeah,
we didn't want this to be a Gilmore Girls specific podcast. However, we couldn't not talk about it at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that for both of us has been with us since the show was on the air, ye old almost 20 years ago for the last episode, which is crazy. But I mean, we've got a few years till then, but it feels like it could be yesterday, but also it's 20 years ago. I don't know. Right. I think also because the fashion has come back around. Like Lorelai's style is currently in fashion again, whereas there was a chunk of time there where it wasn't. And I feel like that just brings a little bit more of those vibes with us too. But we both have projects about it. So Larissa, do you want to talk about your connection with Gilmore Girls?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Joy and I met through Instagram and our two Gilmore Girls related projects / hobbies / pages, whatever you want to call it. So I am behind the account Eating Gilmore, where I originally started by recreating a food or drink inspired by every episode of Gilmore Girls.
You just hit your 200th today as of filming.
Yes.
Yay.
Wild, wild. It's such a crazy journey to have been on, but it's been so much fun and really getting to connect to the show in this different way. It's obviously very unique, but it's really made me appreciate a lot of other aspects of the show, and getting to obviously connect with so many fans and then meet other Gilmore Girls related creators such as yourself. Tell them about your project.
Mine is, I have an embroidery business, and anything, I feel like, again, spring, summer, some of those vibes I can kind of click into and have on lock. I feel like this year I did like a Winnie the Pooh collection, which was really fun and kind of had like the fabric in the background and just kind of that like lighthearted vibes of things. But in my heart of hearts, again, I am an autumn girly, and there is just something so special about Gilmore Girls, the show, in connection to autumn. And I definitely get inspired by all of the leaves and I would say, I don't know. There's just so many things that just make me so happy about the show overall. And I think that connects really well with the Vintage Joy, the embroidery brand. And I think it also connected, obviously, Larisa, you and I together. And I feel like it's been fun to see both of our paths over the last few years with the show overall, and then with even just connecting through this, with starting a podcast. And I feel like the show has expanded in certain ways that I wasn't expecting, where
Mm-hmm.
I obviously loved the show when it was on, the 1 through the 7 seasons, and we will vaguely talk about it here in the life, but this could be more focused on the OG show. But I think even after that, the show's connection with my life since 2000 is something that the cumulative effect of that really blends into kind of my everyday. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think also a Vintage Joy, the brand overall, just that cozy, warm, welcoming feeling that is also very important to this podcast for both of us. And then hopefully for our cozy detectives, you're feeling that as well in the blanket fort with us. But I think understanding and accepting that that's something that's important to me, and that's not something that's like silly, it's just something that's part of me, I think is really helped me connect with the show in even like a deeper way.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good way of putting it. I feel like obviously we have approached the show in a pretty unique way compared to just your average fan.
Yeah, we're a little farther in.
We're very knee deep, but probably full of body submerged. But
Yeah.
I do like how you explained it of our love has only grown and really overtaken our lives in these really beautiful ways. We can talk a little bit about kind of how we came to know and love the show, but I started watching it kind of in the middle of when it was on. I never watched it every single week live. I caught a lot of
Mm.
the reruns on back then ABC Family,
Mm-hmm.
but I would catch a few episodes here and there live when it first aired. And then when I went off to college a few years later is kind of when I really started getting into it, regular rewatches. I got all of the seasons on DVD. And so basically ever since then I've just kind of never stopped rewatching it. Now to the point where it's on all the time. I listen to it to help fall asleep. So it's obviously really become a big part of my life. And then specifically doing the cooking project, it's something that I'm constantly thinking about, like, oh,
Mm.
there's this idea for this dish, or how can I recreate this moment? So I think there's just something very special about a show that obviously, A, we have these really deep connections to, but that it's something to where we haven't grown tired of it yet, and we
Yeah.
haven't stepped away from it. We've only grown to love it even more.
Yeah, agreed. And I feel like also both rewatching the show and other things, other autumn specific things as well, and seeing it in new eyes, because I know for me, not being the cooking project isn't something that like I would have specifically watched the show thinking about. But
Mm-hmm.
even through following your page, I feel like I'll watch it and be like, oh, I wonder if Larissa did that. Or when you were going to announce the second round of walking through the show, I felt like I was very specifically trying to come up with a project that you hadn't done. And that was really fun to kind of see it through those eyes and visualize how you have to watch the show compared to
Mm-hmm.
maybe like somebody else that's watching it for like the fashion. Like I made one video about fashion, and it was fun to like watch the show through those eyes. So I feel like in today's episode I was thinking back through it of different eyes, and I appreciate a show that gives you that many options to
Mm-hmm.
think through different aspects of it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think what's also good is that there are so many eyes and lenses that you can talk about it. Obviously, it's been well analyzed through
Yeah.
articles and podcasts and things like that. But there's also just this very simplistic rewatchability or first time watching it for new fans who are looking for something that isn't going to stress them out, overwhelm
Yeah.
them. It's just so easy to consume. And I think that that's what makes it so long lasting, is that again, it's not stressful, but it's just like, I always call it a weighted blanket, where you're just coming back to home. You're coming back to this very comforting, cozy show. And I don't think there's that many other shows out there that are in the same. Obviously, there's other cozy shows, and I have not even watched a fraction of all of the TV on there. But I think there's just something about Gilmore Girls, and maybe it's just because it's my favorite show and I love it so much, but that is unique and special to it, of the comfort, of the rewatchability, that a lot of other shows don't seem to have.
Yeah, I think also the attention to detail from everything as well, like, just adds into that, because the world is so well fleshed out that even like certain plot holes that will happen throughout time, just like naturally and things, I think because Stars Hollow being that real place in just every way possible, even the fact of like on the WB lot, that whole studio lot is just like, you can walk through Stars Hollow. Like, you could go now to WB, go on the tour, and basically walk through Stars Hollow. So
Yeah.
that's just, that world building, I think, lends also to the coziness factor of it. And it's like the best show I've ever seen do snow, which I know is obviously very integral
Mm-hmm.
to it. But there's some stuff, like, I've watched some shows or some movies where it's just like, oh, that's literally a blanket on the ground. You're like pretending that it's snow, and it's like
Right.
Stars Hollow goes all out with it. So yes.
Yeah, I think there's just enough cornerstones of Gilmore Girls that also we just associate, right? Like books,
Mm-hmm.
the coffee, which is secretly water because it's past my caffeine
Oh,
time.
oh, mine is coffee. I'll be up. It's fine. Who cares?
But the fall elements, which it's so interesting because we all associate this with a fall show, but it spans a whole year essentially, with
Yeah.
minus a little bit of summer, but it just has those cozy warm tones
Mm-hmm.
to it and feels. But the New England, the like Chilton Plaid, Yale, like there's just these cornerstones, the food
Mm-hmm.
that are very memorable and iconic, that I
Yeah.
think also helps us connect with each other too. If you had a plate of Pop Tarts next to a coffee mug and say a book, we're all gonna think Gilmore Girls.
Yeah. And I think that's a good way of putting it about the, like, that human connection of it. Cause I think that's another factor, is just like that human to human connection, the fact that the town has their like town meetings, the fact that they have all these events, the fact that hospitality in general is a large part of the show, and everything from the fact that Lorelai and Suki and Michelle work at an inn, to the fact that Luke has a diner, like those are both hospitality, Miss Patty, just all of the human to human connection elements of it, I think really make it what it is, on top of all of the like beautiful dialogue and
Mm-hmm.
very fast paced everything about the show.
Yeah.
But I think that human to human connection is something that really, as well as all the other wonderful elements, really just like brings us back to this show over and over and over.
Yeah, and those human connections feel very realistic. The family
Mm-hmm.
drama is something I think we can all relate to in some shape or another. You can
Yeah.
connect back to it generationally at different parts in your life. So, yeah, we clearly love Gilmore Girls
Yeah.
quite a bit.
We were like, we're not
So,
going to catch up, but then we just spent all of the catch up time just gushing over this show.
yes, we couldn't
So
not,
funny.
but we can go ahead and kind of walk you through how this episode is going to work. So, if you're joining us for the first time,
Yay, welcome to the
welcome.
blanket fort.
We're so happy to have you here. This is our True Cozy podcast. So, normally, Joy and I each have what we call a cozy case file, where we talk about something that we're currently enjoying or we've loved for a long time, that we'll spend the episode telling each other, telling our listeners, our cozy detectives about. And we're going to still incorporate that because obviously Gilmore Girls is peak cozy to us, peak nostalgia. So we will definitely be talking about why we love Gilmore Girls, but we thought it would be fun to break down each season, the original 7 seasons, and talk a little bit about what we love about each season, our thoughts on it, what our favorite episodes from the season are, maybe our least favorite episodes, and end up putting them in order by ranking. So I'm very excited to see where that goes.
I know. I was excited to see where it went when I did this. I was like, oh,
Same.
one of the other things that we did is we first gave a 1 to 10, almost a dollar amount. That's not right. 1 to 10 number of what we thought the episode would rank for us. And then what it actually ranked for us. So it was interesting to see the differences and things. And like certain episodes and certain seasons, I definitely got right about what I thought they were going to rank. And then other ones I either under or overestimated.
And this was inspired by, I've seen this on TikTok a lot, where fans of Taylor Swift will do this with all of her albums because she has so many. And each, like Joy said, each song, in our case, each episode, we rated from 1 to 10. And then we did the average of all of the episodes for that season to give the season a score. And then we will tell you what our new official preference of seasons are and see if they matched up with our predictions. So we'll start off by talking about where we thought our seasons were going to fall. And at the end, we'll see if those were aligned. I don't know if yours changed at all, Joy.
I think mine did a little bit. I wrote mine a little bit differently than yours, but I can track along. And then I feel like we'll just go back and forth with it and it'll
Perfect.
work out.
It'll make sense. So I predicted that I was going to have season 2 as my top season. I think, and I'll get into this when we go by seasons, but I feel like season 2 is really where they get their stride with the show. And then followed by season 5 is another one of my favorites, I think. I like to call that season the Gilmore Girls Renaissance. It feels very akin to season 2 to me, where they almost refine their stride. And then I had season 1 next for a lot of the nostalgia elements of it. Season 1 is very beloved in my mind. And then followed by season 3 and then 4, because I feel like there's a lot of murky middle ground. There's some episodes I really love in those seasons, and then other ones that kind of just feel like filler to me. And then ending with season 6 and then 7, I feel like, especially by 7, it's almost a different show with Amy leaving, and 6 is where things kind of go off the rails a lot. So my predicted order, really quickly to recap, was 2, 5, 1, 3, 4, 6. So I don't know if anyone followed that, but that's where I thought things were going to land. But we'll see if I was correct or not.
Oh, that's so interesting. I think mine is a little different, but also similar in certain aspects of it. So looking at my spreadsheet that I have here, I think season 1 I predicted to be my favorite because that does have that really hard nostalgia for me. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's my most rewatched season. I would say seasons 1, 2, and 3, probably in that order, just kind of cycling through them. I
Mm-hmm.
do watch the other seasons as well, but I think 1, 2, and 3 really are like, speaking of that, like that home, like there's a lot of those iconic episodes in those. Now I do have obviously favorites in the other seasons as well, and some of those are like my favorite episode is not in 1, 2, or 3. But I had predicted that season 1 would be my favorite. And then I have season 3 and 2 because those are we went down to, I have stuff from like point 0.5 like, so it'll be like
Yeah, it's very
6.5 or
close.
like
Mm-hmm.
7.5. So my season 2 and season 3 I predicted to be point 0.3 difference. So funny. So I have season 1 as my favorite, season 3 as my second favorite, season 2 as my third favorite. And then it gets a little iffy to me. It's funny that you said season 5 being the Renaissance, because that's kind of what I have as well. That's my next one up. And
Mm-hmm.
then I have season 6 and season 4 and season 7, because of the drama in them, aren't as cozy to me. So those are tied at last place.
I gotcha. Yeah, I had a hard time sometimes with putting these episodes and giving them a score
It
because
was hard.
definitely hard because we love them all. Like the difference between seasons, it's very, very close. My lowest rated season was a 4.8, and my
Mm.
highest rated was, where is it? A 6.3. So again, they're all very, very
Mm.
neck and neck. But what I really struggled with was sometimes I think the drama really adds to the episode and it
It
makes
can,
it
yeah.
enjoyable. But I think it's also just how the conflict and the drama is presented
Mm.
is what can make or break the episode for me. And I'll talk about some examples with that when we get into the nitty gritty of the episodes. But yeah, I had a hard time with, okay, it's conflict that I don't necessarily like, but I love where it like maybe moves the storyline
Yeah.
along or how the characters grow from that conflict. And then sometimes
Yeah.
it was just conflict that I'm like, I'm not here for it all.
Yeah, and sometimes it was something where I feel like in even like the filming of it, like I have an episode that is like the iconic episode. Is it Friday Nights Are Right for Fighting? Is that what that one is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that I have ranked high because I love the even the camera work of that. It was just like such like a unique way to do that. We had never seen the
Yeah.
show before. And I feel like sometimes that can be polarizing, but I liked it. But then there's other times too where it felt like I personally like April as a character, but
Mm-hmm.
the point of putting her in felt like mainly just to drive a wedge between Luke and Lorelai. And I think sometimes that some of those episodes, depending on how Luke and Lorelai interacted, even though it had nothing to do with April, I mean, it had to do with April, but like not April as a character. It just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
made it a little bit less for me. Or certain things where like I just am not a big fan. Like one of my least favorite ones and everything is like involving cheating. I'm like, I'm just not a fan.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll get into that
Yeah.
season for
Yeah.
sure. So, are we ready to dive in with season one?
Yes, let's do it.
We can start with our least favorite episode and end on a positive note. So,
Deal.
my least favorite episode from season one is that damn Donna Reed.
Same.
I, that's so funny. I just, I don't And I defend Dean a lot of the time. I don't like Dean in this episode. He just feels very cringy and weird and you need to be in the kitchen and you need to make me this dinner. And while I do like kind of the storyline with Luke and Lorelai and the bird and him
Mhm.
coming over to help her look for it, I feel like we just don't get a lot of insight into that moment with them, where I think we could have spent a little bit more time and starting to plant those seeds of their relationship. I just don't feel like we got a lot of that in that episode to really make that a more enjoyable episode for me. What don't you like about it?
I think for me, a lot of it is kind of looking back on the episode. I would say in the moment, especially because of season one being so nostalgic to me, I really did like the episode originally.
Mm-hmm.
But then I feel like looking back, knowing the whole story about like Dean's relationships overall, I feel like it sours the idea of like, oh, we're just going to do like a home cooked meal. Like if you look at it like very surface
Mm-hmm.
level like that, it's like, okay, that's kind of cute. And then I feel like Rory does all the background work and learns about how like she's actually a producer on the show and how like she had more work involved with it than she thought. And that's kind of fun, but I feel like again overall the I don't know, like just like again, only looking at the surface level can be like a good thing or it can be a bad thing because I think also just being like, okay, I just like want you to cook and then that's like it. Like that's not good either. Like I don't like that. And I
Right.
don't like knowing just the way that like home cooked meals for Dean and his storyline just like goes down so poorly with like the gummy
Lindsay.
bear, yeah, with Lindsay and the gummy bear brownies. It just like it gives me similar vibes of that.
I made those recently and I was not a fan.
Oh really? Oh no. Oh no. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of looking back, and again, it ranked a little bit higher than I would have thought originally for me because of the Luke and Lorelai storyline of it, which I think
Mhm.
is cute. And I think it's like another time where we get an insight to like, okay, Luke's like, well, why would she be inviting me? Like, let me go like see what's going on. But
Yeah.
then it it just falls a little bit more flat than I wanted it to, maybe.
No, I
No.
agree. And I think also I almost consider doing the star-crossed lovers with the car situation.
Mm,
But for me, I feel like while I don't necessarily think Dean was in the right to break up with Rory when she couldn't say I love you,
yeah.
looking at it through his eyes of a teenage boy, I can very much
Yeah.
understand and empathize why he was upset in that moment.
Just
So
feeling
that felt
hurt,
a little
lashing out.
right. That felt a lot more believable for me. But with the Damned Daughter Reed, it just felt like what teenage boy is going to be looking for a home cooked meal? Just kind of like weird,
Yeah.
awkward vibes.
Yeah, very much so. That's so funny. Which was your favorite episode of season 1?
Season one, I have to give it to the pilot.
Nice.
I think it's definitely a very much high rewatched episode. I think in terms of overall with this show, but in pilots in general, it is so strong. It sets up the show so organically
Mhm.
that you're in it right from the beginning. You understand the relationship between Lorelai and Rory. You start really quickly to understand the relationship with the Gilmores, and it sets up the conflict of Friday night dinner. We kind of get introduced to the town and some of the quirky characters. We see the inn and how that runs. So I think it does so much groundwork without it feeling very much like this is what this is and this is what this is that you can get a lot of the times with pilots.
Yes, I cheated a little bit. I have 3.
That is okay.
So, I have the pilot, episode 2, or episode 6 of Rory's birthday parties.
I
I
do love that
think
one too.
yes, I think to speak to what you were talking about the pilot, I think it is also a very, very strong pilot. I think it does a really good job of showing, not telling, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is like another way to say that, where a lot of times pilots will be like, let me describe everything to you. Whereas like we can understand this is Lorelai walking through a small town to go to her. Like you see her doing those things versus them describing it to us. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that again, that world building of things, I think they have a lot of the characters locked in so strongly from episode 1 that again, and not a lot of other shows really have the characters locked in of like you know who this character is from episode 1. The
Right.
one other show I feel like has a really good pilot. I feel like Frasier actually has a really good pilot. But I feel like besides that, this is probably the strongest pilot that I've seen, and I think it's interesting because a little more behind the scenes. But a lot of the character, well, not a lot of, but a few of the characters in the original pilot that wasn't aired versus the pilot that was aired, like changed actors. And I think that's something too that we don't see from a lot of other shows if they had like a pilot before that where they change characters or what. But I feel like walking into the pilot of this that we see on the TV, it really, they like were great at casting all those characters. Not like those other actors were particularly bad, but maybe not for those roles.
Right. Thank goodness we got Melissa McCarthy as Suki instead of Alex
I know,
Bloomstein. I
but that's
love
what
Alex.
I was just gonna like, that's what I was thinking of, like,
Right.
we love her as an
Mm-hmm.
actress, but, like, in that
Just
role, it's
not
just
for
a
that
much
role.
different character,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously Amy loves her too because she put her in other things as well, even in
Right.
Gilmore Girls, so, like
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, she's amazing as Drella, incredible on Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Mhm.
I did want to add, I have the writer for each of my favorite
Mm.
episodes, and there's definitely a theme with a lot of them. Obviously, the pilot was written by the Queen, Amy Sherman Palladino herself, but I did want to see if there was any consistency or pattern with some of my favorites, and there was.
Nice. My 3 options were all have according to Wikipedia, this is where it gets a little tricky because I know that some of the writers change throughout seasons, but it has written by and then it has Amy as the
Mhm.
3 for all of those.
Yes. Yeah, and I think obviously with the show, and this is where we see that down tick with season 7, but she obviously has her hand very heavily in all of the episodes. But overall, with season one, like we talked about, there's a lot of nostalgia there. I like how everything, almost every episode, is introducing us to some aspect of this cozy world. Things aren't quite settled. If you kind of look at the season from a broad scale, I feel like they weren't entirely sure what to do with Lorelai in terms of her romantic partners, because
Yeah.
there's that maybe with Luke. We're obviously introduced to Max. Chris is a big factor, so it kind of felt like they weren't
Yeah.
quite sure what they were doing. But in terms of the core of the show, I think they got that right from the beginning. It's a very fun, sweet season. I personally think the first half is a lot stronger than the second half.
That's what my numbers showed too. I have like
Mm.
10, 10, 10, 10. Like, I clearly like the first half a lot.
Yeah, and I did try to be critical. I only gave one or two episodes a perfect 10 for each
Oh.
season. There were a couple of seasons
I give some extra
I
tens.
you evened it out. Overall, oh, talk about your season one thoughts, and then we'll get into our official scores.
I think overall, this is. I did watch. I don't remember exactly like my first ever episode that I saw, but I remember watching a few of them on either ABC Family or like CW and kind of piggybacking them off each other. But I remember when I bought the DVD set for season one, and even just like the colors, the again, we've talked about this a lot, but like the fall vibes of things, the characters, the quick talking aspects of everything. I feel like we haven't specifically said this, but Lorelai is the character that I relate to the most in like the hospitality side of things, personality side of things, in just like the joking, sarcastic side of things. I keep that back a little bit from this, but I'm a little more sarcastic. I don't know. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. But I feel like the wit involved with that, even her style, it's really a lot of my a lot of my ranking was based upon vibes of how I was feeling towards the episode. It did take me about 2 days to go back and rank all of the episodes, and looking at it, definitely season 1 is the top one that I have of any of the tens. Later towards like the second half of the season, I do have like not like low rankings, but like not tens all the way down the
Mm-hmm.
season. Um, because I feel like again, that's when they're starting to like really work into what's the plot of this, where are we walking with this, but setting up the entirety of the show in those first few episodes. That's why I also had even potentially episode 6 as one of my favorite episodes, because I feel like seeing Rory's birthday is just like, again, the whole town's coming
So
together,
good.
and like the Richard and Emily side of things, and like how do they fold into this, and like it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
clunky in a while, and then it gets like a little frustrating, and then it's like, well, can you please just come to her birthday, and then even just like watching Richard become a grandpa kind of throughout season 1 as well. I feel like by the
Mm-hmm.
end of it, he's really invested into that. I mean, obviously not fully by the end, like before that, but again, in watching episode 1 where he's kind of like, okay, you're here too. Like he doesn't really know what to do with her. Whereas like by that time, he's like, here's money for Fez. And
Mm-hmm.
I just love that character development of it. So I would say, again, overall, that did end up in my totals of my ranking, my top season. So
Mm-hmm.
I was right about my first season being my favorite.
Love that. I will say too, when we sat down to rank these, obviously like we've seen the show a zillion times, but we didn't sit here and watch all 153 episodes like
Yeah.
specifically to rank these. These were based on our gut reaction. So maybe with a very critical lens, we would change it. But I did try to keep a pretty wide scale. So in almost every season, I have a couple ones or twos. I have nines and
Yeah.
tens. So that's why kind of most of my ratings are in the middle. But obviously, I love the show a lot, clearly.
Yes. Yes.
But
Yeah. Which season is it for me? I think it's season 4. There's one of the seasons where I have like a 2 or like a 1, and that brought down my score dramatically, even if I liked a lot of the other episodes, because like that one
mhm,
episode, if I'm just like not feeling it, it like, yeah, it'll pull it down pretty,
yeah.
pretty
I think
aggressively.
too, because mine every season, that's why
Hmm.
overall all of mine are very close. But
Yeah.
my season one mathematical rating was a 5.8.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think I looked at the beginning few seasons very through like a romanticized lens of things. Towards the end, I have some lower scores, but my season 1 total ended at a 8.4.
Ooh, very
I
nice.
like season 1, I'll tell you what.
I love that, which is funny because I didn't even get above a 6 with all of mine, but I think I just took things a little critically.
No, that's good. I feel like towards the end is when I started being like, yeah, like I remember this more and things like that. Like some of the beginning, because we weren't watching all the way through it, there's going to be certain like little moments that I'm going to forget that probably would have either taken my
Sure.
score up or down. But in the vibes of season 1 and feeling the nostalgia and starting to create my own autumn collection, I was just like 10, 10, 10.
I was very stingy with my tens.
No, it's good.
So,
I'm excited to see what
but
your tens are. Do you have any of
yes.
your, like, are your favorite episodes pretty much tens, or do
Yes.
you?
So, season 1, my only 10 was the pilot.
Nice. That's a good one.
But yeah, I did have um excuse me, the Rory's birthday party was a
Oh, yeah.
9 for me, so that was also very, very highly rated.
I get that. Yeah. I obviously gave that one a 10. I was like rocking the tens. That's the most tens that I have, though. Starting in season 2, I get much less tens.
Gotcha. Well, speaking of season 2, what is your least favorite episode of the season?
My least favorite. I have all of my spreadsheets up. Let me click over to season 2. My least favorite is I have two options again. So either it should have been Lorelai, which is
Mm.
episode 14. I think
Mhm.
just because of the drama in that, I was not a fan of. Or I actually did. See, this is where I'm like, okay, well, Joy, why did you do this? But I did the finale. I did episode 22. I can't get
Oh,
started. No,
interesting.
I know, right? I think because they bring us to the point of Lorelai and Christopher like potentially having a future, and then it just feels like it gets taken away from us. Even though obviously we love like Suki and like the wedding aspect of it, I do wish
Mhm.
we'd seen more of that. That's just like a personal preference. I wish that it
Agreed.
had been more focused around Suki's wedding. Like I feel like even again, I believe it's season 1, but when the twins are at the Independence Inn and they have a wedding, I feel like we even see more details about their wedding than
Mhm.
about Suki's, which was kind of
Yep.
like surprising to me. But maybe I was just not even like I love Christopher and Lorelai together, but I feel like I remember in that moment being so like,
Sad. See,
yeah,
for me, I rated that one pretty high because that
mm,
is where
the
I think the
Jess.
drama, not even the
Mm,
jest of it all. But I do like the Rory and Jess drama in that episode. There are certain dramatic beats in episodes that I think they do just from a storytelling perspective. I think they do so well. Like
yeah, that's true.
the even though it hurts, the reveal of Sherry being pregnant and that complete 180, and I just love that shot of Rory and Lorelai
Yeah,
and
that's a
their
good, the very like last shot,
bridesmaids,
basically. Yeah,
with
yeah, that's a
that
good one.
devastating face. I'm just like, oh, this is why I love this show.
That's so baby. What's your least favorite episode?
Mine is actually presenting Lorelai Gilmore, Rory's
Mm.
coming out cotillion episode.
Oh,
I think
interesting.
kind
What
of,
what number is that? Just so I have that on my list.
let me go back to check the actual number. I think that is episode 6.
Okay.
For me, I think it's kind of in the same vein of the Damned Donna Reed for me. Of again, it just kind of feels like this antiquated practice almost,
Mm.
and I get that Rory decides to do it as a favor to Emily, but for me, it feels very out of character, at least for early
Mm.
seasons Rory. I think season 6 Rory obviously gets
Yeah.
very involved with the DIR, but I don't feel like they made that as established as part of Rory's character in season 2.
Mm.
And I also, even though we'll get into my favorite episode in a second, this might contradict it a little bit. I really, really don't like how Richard is in that
Oh
episode
yeah.
because he's very obviously dealing with the potential layoff and retirement at his job. But
Yeah.
the way he treats Emily, I really don't like in that episode. So that is why it is my least favorite.
See, this is where I feel like some of my nostalgia clicked in because I have that episode ranked pretty high. And I think it's because it's just one of those like iconic episodes to me. But thinking about it in the lens of Richard, yeah, I really do not
Mm-hmm.
like that. Like, it's like almost like the opposite of the season 1, episode 6 Richard, where he's just like that grandpa vibe that I was talking about. It's like the opposite of
Mm-hmm.
that. Like, obviously he's nervous and like fearful of losing a
He's
job, but it
going
doesn't
through a
mean you
lot.
just get
Yeah.
to snap at people and just like be rude for a long time. I feel like for Rory, I agree that it doesn't, like, the DAR vibes of it don't click for me, but I think I saw it as like she really wants to connect with her grandma, and it's something that like
Mm-hmm.
she's not really had a lot of opportunities to do before. So I feel like when it almost gives the vibes of when Lorelai and Michelle go to it's like later on in the seasons, they go to the cotillion, I think, as well,
Oh,
or
in
like,
season 7. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's like, oh, Lorelai actually does end up liking it, even though she never like thought she would. It kind of gave that vibe to me of like, I don't think on her own, especially with just Lorelai, Rory would ever do something like that. But I think kind of the like it's kind of like, I just feel like they kind of like pick on each other, like a good way of like the fan dancing and like the tails, and I think I like the feeling of that, but the Richard side of it, obviously, I don't like, and I don't like. Actually, don't even super love the Christopher side of it. Lorelai does have a pretty iconic outfit in that though, when they're dancing in Miss
Mm-hmm.
Patty's. So
Hello, sailor.
uh,
Hello.
it's so good. I know. I think
Yeah.
that's the hard thing too, is to pull out. There's like such great parts of like every episode, but
Mm-hmm.
then there are certain parts where, like, again, that Richard part where like, yeah, I don't like that. But like in my mind, I like forgot that because I was so focused on like the fall nostalgia vibes of it. So
Yes,
interesting.
we're very much taking this our cozy magnifying glass to all of these episodes. But let's
Yeah.
talk about favorite episodes for season 2.
Episode 13, which is,
Let's get a
oh, a
tasket.
Tisket a Tasket. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, why
That
did I
was
have
my
Katie City?
favorite too.
Yeah, that one I love. Again, it's the nostalgia of it. I don't like that. That's where I feel like the drama between Jess and Rory and Dean is like such a good move forward the plot for me. I think probably like the Emily and Lorelai, or the Richard and anybody like those like disagreements I don't like, but the teen ones don't like distract me or whatever as much. I'm just like, okay, here we go. Let's see what's going on here. You didn't bring enough money, but yeah. So I think that's why I had those as the fave.
Okay. So my favorite is Bracebridge Dinner, written by Daniel Palladino, which there is definitely this collective feel, I think, in the fandom that there's certain Daniel episodes that I think are not as good or not as loved because it's definitely a little bit more of the wacky zany parts of the show. But I do have a few of his as my favorites, this being one of them. I just really love how the town comes together. We get to see characters that don't normally interact, with Paris being there and Jess and Luke, like everyone is coming down, Richard and Emily. And this is where I said things were going to kind of differ from what I said previously, because while I don't love that Richard didn't tell Emily about him retiring, I do. This is one of those dramas that I love, because I think that almost breakdown of their relationship a little bit in this moment, because they have this really sweet moment in the carriage ride, but then that's quickly unraveled when Richard has the reveal. I
Yeah.
think that for me, while I do kind of like the Tisket Tasket, Jess and Dean and Rory drama, I do get a little frustrated with Jess in that episode, and Rory specifically for being like, well, these are the rules and I have to go. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Rory, he's your boyfriend. I get that it's supposed to tell us that she has feelings for Jess, but I do think Rory treats Dean so horribly throughout season 2 and at the beginning of 3. But I feel like the way that the drama is in this episode is done a little bit better for me, because like when they get on the carriage rides, that feels a little bit more organic, because Dean is obviously with Clara. Jess sees that Rory is by herself. I think their little brawl at Stars Hollow High, while kind of cheesy, I think kind of makes sense for the
Yeah.
characters. I really love getting to see Lorelai and Suki in their element, coming
Yeah.
together with this big event and pivoting when things don't work out how they plan. I think it really shows us how strong they are in the hospitality field. And I
Yeah.
just really love also the winteriness. We don't get a ton of specific Christmas episodes. So for me, this kind of gives me those Christmas winter-esque vibes that we don't always get in the other seasons.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
That's
is the
so funny.
hospitality aspect of it as well. I just love. I was in that field for 7 or 8 years, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's really fun to see them in their element there.
Yep. So overall with season 2, I think that there's so many fun episodes like the Brace Bridge and
Yeah.
Tisket Tasket where we really get to see those town events that I love so much about the show. I think the emotional moments that we get in this season, like Teach Me Tonight with the car accident, Lorelai's graduation day, which while is really hard to watch with
Yeah.
Rory missing it, I think it's again that drama that really pushes the narrative. I think they really found their groove in season 2. It gets
Mhm.
into why I love it, that balance between relationships, that human connection we talked about, the
Yeah.
small town charm. And for me, why I predicted season 2 being so high was that this is where it really feels like Gilmore Girls to me.
Yeah, agreed. I think also another like shout out like the road trip to Harvard, seeing that
Mhm.
and like the hopes for the future and the goals of it, seeing more about the inn because I feel like obviously we see some about that, but like the ins and outs of inns, even having Lorelai and Suki kind of get in that disagreement slash argument
Mhm.
about
Oh, yeah.
things, I feel like is another way where like yeah, that would really happen. You have to figure out like what's the plan and like you could freak out and then like what do you do if your business partner is like you're like unsure now and
Mhm.
I like seeing people work through things in this season and I feel like yes, I don't love the way that Rory's treating Dean. I feel like in a lot of times that was like the description of the episode. So there's certain things that I have like probably pushed down a little bit more than if it had focused on like a different aspect of the episode when like
Mhm.
refreshing my memory on those. But I think, yeah, they're really catching their stride with this. And I feel like more of these episodes throughout, like I had sprinkles of higher numbers. Whereas I feel like in season 1, I had like a lot of higher numbers. And then I kind of like pretty, not in a bad way, medium, but like they were lower the second half
Mhm.
that I had.
Yeah. What was your overall rating for season 2?
I had it at a 7.4 and I
Okay, very
and I thought
nice.
it was going to be a 7.5. So,
Okay,
not
pretty
bad.
close. Mine was a 6.1, so higher than season 1, but again, all of mine are very, very close. So, getting into season 3 and the least favorite episodes, mine is Keg Max. This is
Yeah.
the party episode where Luke and Dean get into the big fist fight, but we also get a return of Max, Medina. And for me, why this one was rated so low for me is I really don't like the thing that happens in Kyle's bedroom where
Yep.
Jess makes her feel very, very uncomfortable. That just brought it down
Yep.
super, super low for me. Um, I love, love, love Dane and Lane in this
Yes.
episode, but
Mhm.
I had to put that
Yeah.
aside because I don't like that aspect. I think the Dean and Jess fighting didn't really need to happen because to me, we had already kind of moved past that. Dean
Yeah.
and Rory had broken up. She was with Jess, so I didn't like that the fight happened. And then I didn't love this closure with Max. I feel like the Max storyline to me would have made better sense for it to have ended in season 1
Agreed.
or sorry, season 2 after they don't get married. I think it would have been a better end to the relationship, but him coming back in season 3 just didn't feel really fleshed out. It felt unfinished. It gave us a lot more questions, and
Yeah.
to have Lorelai almost 180 back to him in this episode, particularly, it didn't make sense to me story wise.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like it would have been nicer to have a cleaner break from Max for sure. Because
Hmm.
I don't. I don't mind necessarily the will they won't they while it's like leading up to it, but I feel like either you pick them or you don't. And I
Right.
feel like that was the aspect of that I also really didn't like. And obviously, the Kyle bedroom was very not good. My
Yeah.
least favorite though was Here Comes the Sun with Jess
Oh, the
in
backdoor pilot.
California. Yeah, which I feel like now knowing that that's kind of like the vibes
What
of
that
that,
was.
that makes a lot more
Mhm.
sense to me. But especially in the moment, it felt like it so took a different vibe from the
Random.
show.
Mhm.
Yeah. I felt like we were very focused on, I mean, like we love Jess as a character overall, but like, why are we so focused on this character? This is not Lorelai. This is not Rory. I don't like understand it, especially in the moment. I was like, okay, now we're in California. Like, I remember thinking, are they doing this just because they are in California? And they could be like, now we're using the beach. I was so confused by it. And then like, uh, Jess's dad is like not a favorite character of mine either. I
Mm.
feel like he just doesn't, I don't know, mature in any way. Maybe that's part of it. If that was like the pilot for that, maybe we get to see his character development there. But since that never happened, it just feels like an episode out of nowhere. Like, again, it really feels
Mhm.
like another episode from another show that you put in the middle of this one. And so
Yeah,
I feel like that's where, for me, it just didn't really connect. It's not really one that I rewatch very often.
that
Um,
makes sense.
so I feel like for me, that's probably why it's my least favorite.
Yeah, I had that as like a middle ranked. I think I gave it a 5 because I think having that back knowledge of it being the setup for a new show
Yeah.
and knowing that it does lead to Jess's overall character growth, I think is helpful. I think getting to see him in a new setting and how he handles that, and I just acting wise, I love the scene of him
Mm.
yelling at his dad where he's like, "I have nothing," like that.
Yeah,
Milo
he's
does
a great
such a good
actor.
job in that
Yeah.
scene. Um, but I can definitely understand, and I know for a lot of fans, they don't like it because of how weird it feels. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this also the episode where Rory finds out she's valedictorian at the end?
Yeah, I believe so. Luke
So I
tells
think from
yeah, Rory. Oh no, he breaks the news to Rory. I think that is. It doesn't have it in that, but I feel like a lot
because
of times for
it's
me the episodes like connect, so I was kind of going a
mhm.
lot off of
Yeah,
the
I just
the
really like
connections.
that scene at the end where Lorelai's going through her yearbook, and she's like, "Are they calling you a valedictorian? Like, is that some
That's
new
cute.
insult?" I do think it's, even though I don't understand how Rory's valedictorian, I
Yeah.
think it's still a very sweet moment. But talking about favorites, I have a feeling we might have the same one for this one, but maybe not.
Oh, I'm nervous.
My and this because this is probably in my top 3 episodes.
Okay, I think you
Mine
probably
is
will.
They Shoot Gilmore's, Don't They? The Dance Marathon.
Oh yes, yes, that one and a deep fried Korean Thanksgiving. Those are the two that I have.
Yes, I that one, deep fried got a 9 for me, so
Yeah.
that one's also very high for me. I just The Dance Marathon is one of the best just executed beginning to end
Yep.
episodes.
Yep.
The choreography, the plot, the drama, the costumes, everything about it. This is why I love Gilmore Girls.
Yes, yes. Again, the vibes of it. I really appreciate when in like a TV show in real life when there's like some event and everybody like buys into it, meaning like
Mhm.
everybody's like dressing up for the event. And I feel like the vibes of that are really, really good. I feel like it's like this is something where I think when I originally watched it, I probably loved just the dance part and like not the drama part. But I think looking back over it, the drama doesn't bug me as much again because it's like that teenager drama. So it does
Mhm.
move the plot forward. It does kind of add to that. And yes, the vibes and feeling and everything of this, I love. I also do love a deep fried Korean Thanksgiving. Those were my two that I
Yes,
had.
I had to give that one. I docked at one point, and this is purely from my own work. I can't stand how butthurt Lorelai gets over Rory
Mm,
applying to more than Harvard. Like I get why for her character, but that frustrates me so much working in
Yeah.
college admissions,
Yeah,
especially
putting
as
all
pregnant
your
women would
eggs
know,
in that one
right, in
basket.
the hardest school to get into.
Yeah.
So to me, that's why it's not
Valid.
a perfect episode. While I do love it so much, especially the foodie in me, how she acts in that episode just dinks it just slightly for me.
Yeah, yeah. I do love the Lane interactions with Dave, though. I think
Mhm.
that's really
Oh, Bible
sweet.
Kiss Bible.
So cute. So cute. I love Suki's. Like, I feel like Melissa just does a great job in this episode. I
So
mean,
good.
they all do all
Mhm.
the great jobs in all the episodes, whether they're our favorites or not. They're all great actors, but I just feel like it's just funny and quirky. And I feel like any of the episodes that really have that like good quirky aspect to it
Mhm.
really are probably the majority of my top episodes
Yep.
because it just like has that feeling. And a lot of times like when they're in the town too. Like I like the amount that we see of the town in that
Mhm.
and yeah.
And then
Same.
again with that episode, it's the peak fall. Though their
Yeah.
two coats, the tan and red together, some of my favorite outfit
Mhm.
combinations
Mhm.
together. Oh, I love it so much.
Very classic.
What are your overall thoughts for season 3?
I would say this is my third top. I'm clicking through all my documents here. This is my actually, you know what? This is my second favorite
Hmm.
season. So the second season being my third favorite. So I think the vibes of this season clicked with me a little bit better. And I'm almost positive too in They Shoot Gilmore's, it's Kenny Ortega who's the choreographer, and I love him too.
Mhm.
So it's just like I just feel like in a lot of ways my worlds kind of collided in this. Obviously, previous episodes we've talked about like my love of High School Musical and I love Kenny
Right.
Ortega in like all the things that I've seen him choreograph. Um, I feel like we get to see the Lane and Dave storyline in this too, which obviously is like a
Mhm.
super
The
fave.
best.
And I feel like again, I would have loved to see that flesh out more, but I get it. Everybody gets their own show, but it's fine. Um, yeah, I like it. I think this could be my for a lot of these. I'm just gonna be like, I like it because I like it, and it's vibes. What
No,
about
that makes
you?
sense. Which also, I feel like most people know this, but I forgot to say the writer for They Shoot Gilmore's, which again, Queen Amy. No one
Mm-hmm.
else could have written that episode. But overall, for 3, I think in my original, this is like exactly middle. This is my fourth favorite, what I predicted. To me, looking at the season as a whole, I feel like there are actually a lot of filler episodes.
That's a good point.
When I really don't like the Francie plot, and I think there's so many episodes around that. And I think the beginning of season 1, or sorry, 3, and the end are very strong, but that middle ground, once you get after the deep fried Korean Thanksgiving and then to the big one, though that's kind of stretch. I feel like
Yeah,
so much doesn't really happen. So that's why I kind of give it a middle ranking. I don't like how Rory drags Dean out for so long. I kind of talked about that already. And I actually don't like Rory and Jess in their actual relationship. I don't think he's a good boyfriend at all. To me, a lot of their appeal, I think, was more of the tension before getting together. And then he just ends up being a terrible boyfriend. But there are obviously some bangers in this season. When we originally sat down to talk about what we were going to do for this episode, Joy and I were originally just going to talk about our top 5, but I definitely struggled to put a top 5.
yeah,
And at one point, I did have both They Shoot Gilmore's and Korean Deep Fried Korean Thanksgiving in the top 5. So I think this is the only season that I had a potential double in my top 5, but I think overall the season is just kind of a midway for me. So
yeah,
I gave it ended up with a 5.5
yeah.
as my overall score.
I think that's how my overall score got pulled up is because the episodes that I really liked, I'm marking as a 10, but the other ones, because they're kind of mid-range, I'm putting them in that mid-range category of like
Mhm.
5 to 7 or something like that. And I feel like that ended up pulling up my overall score because there are some like really good, solid episodes, but there are quite a few fillers. Like, I don't love the Francine plot either. I feel like it's kind of
Mhm.
like figuring out something figuring out some type of plot to add into school, I feel like can be a little bit tricky outside of like different stereotypes of like bullying or something like that. And I think that's where it can like feel a little drawn out. But I think overall, I, like you said, like some of my top favorites were this season in like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was your final verdict, though, on season 3 on your rating?
I had it at 7.6. I thought it was going to be about a 7.8, so I wasn't that far off. It was a little bit lower than I thought it was, but not by too much. So this is the part where we normally would do our 2% cozy, but we have been chatting for a hot minute about Gilmore Girls. So our 2% cozy for this week is to have you listen and watch your favorite Gilmore Girls episode. Join us next week as we discuss the last few seasons of Gilmore Girls. You can find us on Instagram at Blanket Port Files Pod, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'd appreciate your feedback, so leave us a review. It really does help us out a lot. And then join us next week in the Blanket Fort, where we'll discuss those last few seasons.